What if I told you that one of history's oldest batteries is nearly 2,000 years old? That an ancient oracle may have experienced real chemical-induced visions? That one of the Bible's most famous stories became more mysterious after archaeologists started digging? Or that medieval tales about dragons may have begun with something entirely real? At first, these claims sound impossible. But that's exactly what makes them fascinating. Because the deeper scientists investigate the ancient world, the more often they discover that myths are rarely created from nothing. Behind many legends lies a real place, a real disaster, a real object, or a real person. And today, we're going to uncover some of the most extraordinary examples ever found. 1. The Oracle of Delphi. Before making decisions that could shape kingdoms, many rulers traveled to one place: Delphi. There, a priestess known as the Pythia delivered prophecies believed to carry the voice of Apollo himself. Ancient writers described her entering a mysterious trance before speaking. For centuries, modern scholars assumed the visions were purely theatrical, carefully staged performances wrapped in religious ceremony. Then geologists uncovered an unexpected clue. The sanctuary stood above the intersection of two active fault lines. Research suggested that gases, including ethylene, may once have escaped through fractures in the rock. In sufficient concentrations, those gases can alter perception, produce euphoria, and induce trance-like states. The idea remains debated. Not every researcher accepts the hypothesis. Yet it offers a fascinating possibility. The Pythia may not have been pretending. She may have genuinely experienced altered states of consciousness triggered by the landscape beneath her feet. Sometimes, the boundary between religion and science is not a wall. It is simply a question waiting centuries for an answer. 2. The Baghdad Battery. In the late 1930s, an archaeological discovery near Baghdad sparked one of history's most enduring debates. At first glance, the object seemed ordinary, a small clay vessel. Hidden inside was a copper cylinder, and at its center rested an iron rod. Nothing about it appeared revolutionary, until someone built a replica. When the vessel was filled with an acidic liquid similar to vinegar, the device produced electricity. Only a tiny voltage, but enough to raise an astonishing question. Had people living 2,000 years ago stumbled upon electrical technology? The artifact quickly became famous as the Baghdad Battery. Some imagined forgotten civilizations powered by ancient science. Others urged caution. Archaeologists pointed out an important problem. No electrical wiring, no lamps, no machinery, no written instructions explaining how such a device was used. Most specialists now believe the object probably served another purpose. Even so, experiments suggest it could have generated enough current for simple electrochemical processes, including the application of thin metallic coatings. The mystery remains unresolved. And perhaps that is exactly what makes the artifact so fascinating. Sometimes the most intriguing discoveries are the ones that refuse to provide easy answers. 3. The Minoan Collapse. Long before Athens became the heart of Greek civilization, another culture ruled the Aegean. The Minoans built thriving cities, controlled maritime trade, and created some of the ancient world's most sophisticated art. Then, their dominance began to fade. Later Greek traditions remembered a catastrophe unlike anything their ancestors had witnessed. The earth shook. Fire erupted from an island. The sea itself became a weapon. For centuries, those accounts sounded more mythical than historical. Then scientists examined the volcanic island, now known as Santorini. Around 1600 BC, it experienced one of the largest eruptions of the Bronze Age. The explosion hurled ash high into the atmosphere and triggered enormous tsunamis across the Aegean. Archaeological excavations on Crete reveal coastal settlements damaged or abandoned during this turbulent period. Trade routes fractured. Economic stability weakened. The Minoan civilization did not disappear overnight, but the eruption may have delivered a blow from which it never truly recovered. Sometimes, history remembers disasters not as geological events, but as legends passed from one generation to the next. 4. The Lighthouse of Alexandria. Ancient travelers spoke of a structure so extraordinary that later generations struggled to believe it had ever existed. Rising above the harbor of Alexandria, the Pharos guided ships from astonishing distances. By day, it dominated the skyline. By night, its fire became a beacon visible far across the Mediterranean. Some writers went even further. They claimed enormous mirrors reflected the light so brilliantly that ships could see it from nearly 50 kilometers away. Others insisted those mirrors could concentrate sunlight into a weapon. That final claim remains highly doubtful. Yet the lighthouse itself was no fantasy. Underwater excavations off Alexandria's coast uncovered immense stone blocks, monumental statues, and architectural fragments scattered across the seabed. They belonged to the fallen remains of one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements. Earthquakes eventually reduced the tower to ruins, but archaeology confirmed what many once questioned. The Pharos truly stood among the wonders of the ancient world. Reality, it turns out, required very little embellishment. 5. The Pied Piper. Few legends are as unsettling as the story of the Pied Piper. A mysterious stranger arrives in the town of Hamelin. He solves a crisis, his reward is denied, and in retaliation he leads away the town's children, who are never seen again. It sounds like a cautionary fairy tale. Yet the oldest surviving records tell a different story. Medieval documents from Hamelin mention the disappearance of a large group of young people in 1284. Curiously, they make no mention of rats. That detail appears only in much later versions. Historians have proposed another explanation. During the High Middle Ages, recruiters traveled through German towns seeking settlers willing to establish communities farther east. Entire groups of young adults sometimes left together in search of land and opportunity. Over generations, memory transformed migration into mystery. The recruiter became a piper. The journey became enchantment, and history slowly evolved into folklore. 6. Dragon bones. For centuries, Chinese apothecaries sold a medicine known simply as dragon bone. The powdered remains were believed to strengthen the body and cure disease. To modern ears, the name sounds entirely mythical, until you discover where those bones came from. Many were collected in regions now recognized as some of the richest dinosaur fossil sites on Earth. Farmers unearthed enormous vertebrae, massive skull fragments, bones unlike anything belonging to living animals. Without geology, without paleontology, without the concept of extinction. The conclusion seemed obvious. They had uncovered dragons. In reality, they were holding creatures that had vanished millions of years before humanity existed. The fossils were genuine. Only the name was mistaken. Sometimes myths begin not because people imagine impossible things, but because they discover something entirely real that no existing language can explain. 7. Jericho. Few biblical stories have been dismissed as quickly as the fall of Jericho. Trumpets sound, the people shout, the walls collapse. To many historians, it seemed like the perfect example of symbolic storytelling. Walls do not fall because people make noise. Then archaeologists began excavating Tel es Sultan, the site of ancient Jericho. What they uncovered complicated the story. Massive defensive walls had indeed collapsed. Even more intriguing, many sections had fallen outward, creating natural ramps leading into the city. Inside the ruins, archaeologists found storage jars still filled with grain. That detail mattered. Cities that surrender after long sieges are usually starving. Their food stores are empty. Jericho's grain suggested the city fell suddenly, before supplies had been exhausted. Exactly how the walls collapsed remains debated. Earthquake, structural failure, military assault. The evidence does not provide a definitive answer. but it does suggest that the city's destruction was both rapid and catastrophic. Sometimes archaeology cannot confirm a miracle. It can only confirm that something extraordinary happened. 8. Pytheas and the Frozen Sea. Around 325 BC, the Greek explorer Pytheas of Massalia sailed farther north than any Mediterranean navigator before him. When he returned, he described a place he called Thule. There, he wrote, the sea became something unlike either land or water, a strange substance that ships could not sail through and people could not walk across. His contemporaries laughed. Strabo dismissed him. Polybius called him a liar. For nearly 2,000 years, Pytheas became a symbol of unreliable exploration. Today, many historians believe he was describing sea ice. The shifting mixture of floating ice, slush, and freezing seawater behaves exactly as he described. Modern reconstructions of his voyage suggest he may have reached Iceland or the coast of Norway. The explorer was not inventing fantasy. He was describing an Arctic landscape that no Mediterranean audience had ever imagined. 9. Polynesian Navigators. Imagine standing on a Pacific island and watching a canoe disappear over the horizon. No compass, no map, no visible destination, only stars, ocean swells, and memory. For generations, European scholars believed such voyages were impossible. Primitive canoes, they argued, could never cross the largest ocean on Earth. Then archaeology, linguistics, and genetics began telling a different story. Long before Europeans arrived, the sweet potato, a plant native to South America, was already growing across Polynesia. It had crossed the Pacific somehow. In recent years, genetic studies have uncovered evidence of contact between Polynesian and indigenous South American populations centuries before Columbus. The exact nature of that contact is still debated. But one conclusion is no longer controversial. Polynesian navigators were among the greatest sailors in human history. They crossed an ocean once thought impossible to navigate, not by accident, but by extraordinary skill. 10. The Fountain of Youth. When Juan Ponce de Leon reached the Caribbean, he encountered stories of waters said to restore strength and prolong life. Later generations transformed those stories into one of history's most famous legends, the Fountain of Youth. Historians often dismiss the tale as wishful thinking, yet the legend may have grown from something surprisingly ordinary. Across the world, certain natural mineral springs contain unusually high concentrations of dissolved elements that can ease inflammation, improve circulation, and promote recovery from illness. Ancient communities had no chemistry. They judged water by experience. Some springs genuinely seemed to heal, others did not. The Fountain of Youth was probably never a single magical place. It may have been a poetic description of something real. People noticing the long-term benefits of mineral-rich water centuries before science could explain why. 11. Hannibal crosses the Alps. For more than 2,000 years, historians argued over a single question. Which route did Hannibal take across the Alps? Ancient sources agreed on the achievement. They disagreed on the path. Then researchers looked for evidence in an unexpected place. Not ruined fortifications, not buried weapons, but ancient soil. At the Col de la Traversette, scientists discovered disturbed sediments dating to the late 3rd century BC. The deposits contained unusually high concentrations of bacteria associated with the digestive systems of large mammals. The findings remain debated, yet they are consistent with what one would expect if thousands of horses, pack animals, and perhaps even elephants had once passed through the area. Sometimes history leaves behind monuments. Sometimes it leaves behind footprints so small they can only be seen under a microscope. 12. The Banshee. Irish folklore tells of a terrifying figure known as the Banshee. You never saw her. You heard her first. A piercing cry outside the house in the middle of the night. If the wail came for your family, someone would soon die. Folklorists long regarded the Banshee as a personification of grief. a supernatural explanation for the inevitability of death. Then anthropologists looked more closely at an old Irish tradition known as keening. For centuries, certain women were called upon to perform ritual laments for the dying and the dead. Their voices were unlike ordinary singing. Long, piercing, almost inhuman. The sound carried across fields long before news of a death reached neighboring homes. Over generations, memory blurred. The woman became a spirit. The ritual became a warning. And eventually, the Banshee entered legend. Perhaps the ghost was never supernatural. Perhaps she had simply been human all along. 13. Excalibur. Every version of the Arthurian legend ends the same way. King Arthur's sword is returned to the water. A mysterious hand rises from the lake, catches the blade, and pulls it beneath the surface forever. Historians long regarded the image as pure symbolism. Then archaeology uncovered something remarkable. Across Britain and throughout much of northern Europe, archaeologists have recovered hundreds of swords deliberately placed in rivers, lakes, and bogs. These were not broken weapons discarded after battle. Many were masterpieces of ancient craftsmanship. Valuable, functional, perfectly usable. Yet someone chose to surrender them to the water. The practice continued for centuries. To ancient people, lakes and rivers were not merely part of the landscape. They were sacred places, boundaries between worlds. Excalibur may never have belonged to a single king, but the ritual behind the legend was undeniably real. 14. Romulus and Remus. Every civilization tells stories about its beginnings. Rome chose one of the strangest. 2 abandoned infants, rescued and nursed by a she-wolf, before growing up to found one of history's greatest empires. For centuries, historians interpreted the wolf as a symbol, a metaphor for strength, survival, Rome itself. Then zoologists pointed to something unexpected. Although extraordinarily rare, wild wolves have occasionally adopted orphaned human children. Modern records document a handful of cases in which children survived among wolf packs for extended periods. None resemble the legend in every detail, but they demonstrate one important fact. The central image, the wolf caring for a human child, is not biologically impossible. Rome's founding story may still be a legend, yet one of its most unbelievable details belongs firmly within the realm of nature. 15. Will-o'-the-Wisp. Across Europe, travelers spoke of mysterious blue lights drifting above marshes after dark. The British called them will-o'-the-wisps. In Germany, they became Irrlichter. Similar stories appear in cultures around the world. The lights seemed alive. They floated through the fog. They lured travelers away from safe paths, and many who followed them were never seen again. For centuries, these stories were dismissed as superstition. Modern chemistry offers another explanation. Marshes naturally produce gases such as methane and phosphine as organic matter decomposes. Under certain conditions, these gases can ignite or create faint, glowing phenomena. Scientists continue to debate whether this fully explains every historical account. But one thing is certain. Dangerous wetlands needed no supernatural spirits to claim lives. The legend may have been nature's warning, remembered long after its original explanation was forgotten. 16. The Phoenix. From Egypt to Persia. From Greece to China. Civilizations separated by vast distances all imagined a bird reborn from fire. The Phoenix. Mythologists have traditionally interpreted it as a symbol of the rising sun. Death followed by renewal. A poetic cycle repeated every dawn. Yet ancient observers may have witnessed something equally remarkable. Large birds, particularly herons and storks, sometimes spread their wings toward intense heat or smoke in a behavior known as anting or thermal sunning. To someone with no knowledge of animal behavior, the sight would have been unforgettable. A great bird standing calmly amid smoke and flames, not fleeing, not burning, simply waiting. Was that enough to inspire the legend of a bird reborn through fire? We cannot know, but history is full of myths that began with a perfectly ordinary event, seen through extraordinary eyes. For centuries, we believed myths existed because ancient people did not understand the world. But perhaps we have been asking the wrong question. What if myths were not attempts to escape reality, but attempts to explain it? Again and again, archaeology uncovers places once thought imaginary. Geology explains disasters once blamed on angry gods. Biology reveals the real animals hidden behind legendary monsters. History has not proven every myth true. Far from it. But it has shown something far more interesting. The line between myth and history is far thinner than we once believed. Every generation assumes it has separated fact from fiction. Yet every generation discovers that some of yesterday's legends were simply truths waiting for evidence. So the next time someone tells you an ancient story is impossible, remember this: the ancients were often wrong, but sometimes they remembered something the rest of the world had forgotten. If you enjoyed this journey into the forgotten edge of history, subscribe, because there are still countless mysteries waiting beneath the surface, and many of them may turn out to be true.